Most people who watch the news would have heard the term madrassas mentioned in connection with Mohammedan Islam. What are they?
One of the greatest ironies and tragedies regarding the cult of Muhammad is the indisputable fact that 99.99% of its followers have absolutely no idea about the true origins of the Quran, its foreign words, its concepts, its ideas, and its rules and regulations. Most of them, especially among the 1,000 millions who are not Arabic speakers, are content to know that they are Muslims, that Muhammad was a prophet, that the Kaaba is holy, and they follow the prayers and traditions as zombified clones of Muhammad. You can ask any Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Malay, Indonesian, Afghani, Iraqi, Saudi, or any other Muhammadan where the word madrasa, meaning a religious school, came from. Not one of them would know the answer because they have been indoctrinated into believing that the word is Arabic in origin. They will be, to put it mildly, shocked and outraged when you would point out to them that its roots are from Hebrew and not Arabic. They will not believe you and would most certainly accuse you of being a filthy pig Zionist agent. Their dilemma is understandable, since the followers of Muhammad are actually the victims of a self-destructive catch-22 situation. They will try to use every conceivable contorted logic to get themselves out of their dilemma, but can never succeed because the facts and reality are all against them. They cannot, for example, explain away the innumerable and unsurmountable discrepancies found in the Quran between its version of the biblical events when compared to their originals in the Bible. They cannot explain how it is that the Quran contains at least 118 words, many of which are among the most important, that are actually of foreign origin and not Arabic. They try their best to cover up the fact that there are an enormous number of grammatical and lexical errors in the language of the Quran that completely discredit their claim to its alleged divine origin. That Muhammad's God, Allah, is shown in the Quran to have a fickle and unsure characteristic, requiring him to repeatedly change his mind and or his earlier ordinances through the enormous number of abrogating and abrogated verses that fill 71 out of 114 chapters of the Quran, as we have demonstrated earlier. The Arabic madrasa is a loan word derived from the Hebrew Beit HaMidrash, meaning a house of learning, that is, a school. In the Arabia of the time of Muhammad, the most learned people were the Christian and Judaized Arabs, but not the pagan Arabs, as Muhammad himself confirms in his Quran. Al-A'raf 7.157. Those who follow the apostle, the unlettered prophet. Al-Jum'ah 62.2. It is he who has sent amongst them the unlettered, an apostle from among themselves. It is the ahadith, after all, that demonstrate that this word, madrasa, is associated with the Hebrew language of the Judaized Arabs of the Medina. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 3.137, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "We are an illiterate nation. We neither write nor know accounts. The month is like this and this, i.e. sometimes of 29 days and sometimes of 30 days. Al-Tirmidhi Hadith 2215, narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b. Ubay told of Allah's Messenger meeting Gabriel and saying, "I have been sent, Gabriel, to a people who are unlettered, among whom are old men and old women, boys and girls, and men who have never read a book." He replied, "The Quran, Muhammad, has been sent down in 7 modes." Al-Bukhari Hadith 9.447, narrated by Abu Huraira. While we were in the mosque, Allah's Apostle came out and said, "Let us proceed to the Jews." So we went out with him till we came to Beit al-Midras. The Prophet stood up there and called them, saying, "O assembly of Jews, surrender to Allah, embrace Islam, and you will be safe." And added, "Know that the earth is for Allah, and I want to exile you from this land. So whoever among you has a property, he should sell it. Otherwise, know that the land is for Allah and His Apostle." Listeners, please note that the expression used by Muhammad, Beit al-Madras, is the Hebrew for Beit HaMidrash, meaning the house of learning, which did not exist among the pagans of Arabia, such as Muhammad and his Quraysh tribe. Please also note that it was Muhammad who was aggressing upon the Judaized Arabs without any provocation from their side. Madrasas did not exist in the early period of Muhammadan Islam. Their formation can be traced to the early Muhammadan custom of meeting in mosques to discuss religious issues. At this early stage, people seeking religious knowledge tended to gather around certain more knowledgeable ones. These informal teachers later became known as the sheikhs, and these sheikhs began to hold regular religious education sessions called majalis. In 859, Jami'at al-Qarawiyyin, located at Al-Qarawiyyin Mosque, was established in the city of Fez, Morocco, which is considered the oldest madrasa in the Muhammadan world. It was founded by Fatima, the daughter of a wealthy merchant named Muhammad al-Fihri. During the late Abbasid period, the Seljuk Wazir Nizam al-Mulk created the first major official academic institution known in history as the Madrasa al-Nizamiyya, based on the informal majalis, sessions of the sheikhs. Al-Mulk, who would later be murdered by the assassins Al-Hashashin, created a system of state madrasas in various Abbasid cities at the end of the 11th century. During the rule of the Fatimid and Mamluk dynasties and their successor states in the medieval Middle East, many of the ruling elite founded madrasas through a religious endowment known as the Waqf. Not only was the madrasa a potent symbol of status, but it was an effective means of transmitting wealth and status to their descendants, especially during the Mamluk period, when only former slaves could assume power. The sons of the ruling Mamluk elite were unable to inherit. Guaranteed positions within the new madrasas thus allowed them to maintain status. Therefore, madrasa literally means a place where learning, teaching is done. The word is also present as a loan word with the same innocuous meaning in many Arabic-influenced languages such as Urdu, Bengali, Hindi, Persian, Turkish, Kurdish, Indonesian, Malay, and Bosnian. It is important to note here that there have been negative connotations in recent times regarding this particular word. A madrasa, therefore, is an Islamic religious school. Many of the Taliban were educated in Saudi-financed madrasas in Pakistan that teach Wahhabism, which is the most fundamentalist and true representation of Muhammadan Islam that is rooted in Saudi Arabia. Around the world, Saudi wealth and charities contributed to an explosive growth of madrasas during the Afghan jihad against the Soviets. During that war, 1979 to 1989, a new kind of madrasa emerged in the Pakistan-Afghan region, not so much concerned about the scholarship as making war on infidels. The enemy then was the Soviet Union. Today, it is America and the West. All of these groups are connected by a network of seminaries, or as the term is called in the local vernacular, madrasa. The main source of funding for these groups is Saudi Arabia. In fact, this whole phenomenon that we are confronting, which Al-Qaeda is a part of, is very closely associated with Saudi Arabia's financial and religious projects for the Muhammadan Muslim world as a whole. In order to have terrorists, in order to have supporters for terrorists, in order to have people who are willing to interpret religion in violent ways, in order to have people who are willing to legitimize crashing themselves into building and killing 3,000 or more innocent people, one needs particular interpretations of the Quran. Those interpretations of the Quran are being propagated out of schools that receive organizational and financial funding from Saudi Arabia, without which they cannot possibly exist. They would not have proliferated across Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan without Saudi funding. They would not have had the kind of prowess that they have without Saudi funding, and they would not have trained as many people without Saudi funding. So we have a whole series of what can be called Muhammadan Muslim military academies, military camps, terrorist camps along the border that mix the deadly and poisonous dosage of Muhammadan Islam with a lot of military training. At the same time, they also train a new generation of mosque leaders and clerics who go forth and open their own madrasas or go populate mosques from Africa to Europe and from Asia to the Americas and Australia. That is exactly how the virulent virus of the Quran is propagated in a pandemic fashion in all countries of the world, whilst most of humanity is unaware that it is being infected with a deadly disease. While many of our ignorant, politically correct, or most probably spineless academics, religious leaders, the media, and our politicians tell us how peaceful and all-encompassing Muhammadan Islam actually is.